My name is Erica, and I'm the oldest of 3 children. My father runs his own business, while my mother works part-time at some trading company. Then there are the twins, Lisa and Charlie, who are 6 years younger than me. They were always the golden children, the ones who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. From the moment the twins were born, my role in the family changed dramatically. I wasn't just a big sister, I became their live-in nanny, housekeeper, and personal assistant all rolled into one. While other kids my age were enjoying their childhood, I was picking up the twins from school, helping them with their homework, and dragging them to various after-school activities. The house was my responsibility too. Cleaning, cooking, grocery shopping, you name it, I did it. Meanwhile, Lisa and Charlie didn't lift a finger. They'd come home, drop their backpacks wherever they pleased, and leave a trail of mess behind them like it was their job. One particularly frustrating afternoon, when I was about 15, I finally gathered the courage to confront my parents about this arrangement. "Mom, Dad," I said during dinner, trying to keep my voice steady, "why am I the only one who has to do all the housework? Lisa and Charlie never help with anything." Mom put down her fork and gave me that look, the one that made me feel like I was being ridiculous for even asking. "Honey, that's just how things work in families. The oldest child always has more responsibilities." "But that's not true," I protested. "I've been to Sarah's and Jessica's houses, and their families split the chores equally between all the kids." "Those families are raising their children wrong," Mom snapped, her face hardening. "Is that what this is about? You've been getting ideas from your friends?" The twins exchanged knowing smirks across the table. They loved it when I got in trouble. Later that week, I tried talking to Lisa and Charlie directly about helping out more. "Why don't you guys ever help with the housework?" I asked them while we were doing their homework. Lisa rolled her eyes. "Mom says we need to focus on our studies and activities. That's our main task." "Yeah," Charlie chimed in with a smug grin, "you're supposed to do all that stuff. Mom told us so." But it wasn't just about the chores. The twins seemed to take pleasure in making my life harder. They'd deliberately mess up rooms I'd just cleaned or break things and blame it on me. Sometimes they'd lie to our parents, claiming I hadn't helped them with their homework or forgotten to buy something they'd asked for. My senior year of high school should have been exciting, a time filled with college applications, campus visits, and dreams of the future. Instead, it became yet another reminder that in my family, I would always come second to the twins. I remember the evening clearly. I was sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by college brochures, when my parents came home. They had that look on their faces, the one they always got when they were about to deliver bad news to me. "Erica, we need to talk about college," Dad started, not quite meeting my eyes. Mom jumped in, her voice matter of fact. "We've been looking at our finances, and we just don't have the money for your college education. All our savings need to go toward the twins' future education." The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat there, staring at the brochures that now seemed to mock me with their promises of bright futures and new beginnings. "But I've been working so hard," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "My grades are good, I could get scholarships." "The decision is final," Mom cut me off. "We have to think about Lisa and Charlie's future." "What about my future?" I asked, fighting back tears. "You're resourceful, honey," Dad said, patting my shoulder awkwardly. "You'll figure something out." That night, I lay in bed, listening to the twins laughing in their room down the hall. They already knew, I could tell by the way they'd been smirking at me during dinner. Once again, they were getting everything while I got nothing. But something snapped in me that night. Instead of breaking down, I got angry. Really angry. The next day, I started job hunting. Within 2 weeks, I had lined up a position at an entry-level corporate job. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough for me to rent a tiny apartment. The day after graduation, I moved out. The years that followed were hard, but I worked my ass off. I took every training opportunity my company offered, volunteered for extra projects, and slowly climbed the corporate ladder. While I didn't have a college degree, I had something better, real-world experience and a fierce determination to succeed. Meanwhile, the twins got their college education, just as planned. Mom and Dad found plenty of money for their tuition, housing, and expenses. They graduated with fancy degrees and even fancier attitudes about it. The irony? Lisa can't hold down a job for more than 3 or 4 months. She's always got some excuse about why each position isn't the right fit for her talents. And Charlie? He's working as a warehouse supervisor, a job that definitely doesn't require the expensive degree our parents went into debt for. But oh, how they love to bring up their college education at every family gathering. Well, as someone with a degree in business administration, Lisa will start giving me that sideways look she's perfected over the years. You know, back in college, Charlie will chime in, not to be outdone. I just sit there, sipping my wine and thinking about my salary that's more than their combined incomes. Sometimes I have to hide my smile behind my glass when they start bragging about their degrees while living paycheck to paycheck. One day I was mindlessly scrolling through my feed during my lunch break when I saw my cousin Sarah's post. There she was, standing in this gorgeous emerald green dress, beaming at the camera. The caption read, "Can't wait for Aunt Margaret's big celebration." I froze, my sandwich halfway to my mouth. My mother's birthday wasn't for another few weeks, and I hadn't heard anything about a celebration. Maybe I was jumping to conclusions. Perhaps it was for something else entirely. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before I typed, "Beautiful dress. What's the celebration for?" Sarah's response came almost immediately, "For Aunt Margaret's 55th birthday party. It's going to be amazing. Haven't you started planning your outfit yet?" I felt like I'd been dunked in ice water. My mother was planning a big birthday celebration, and I, her eldest daughter, knew nothing about it. My hands were shaking as I pulled up my phone contacts and called my mother. She answered on the 4th ring. "Erica, what is it?" "I'm rather busy right now." "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I just saw Sarah's post about your birthday party. Why haven't I heard anything about it?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, then a small sigh. When she spoke again, her voice had that familiar condescending tone I'd grown up hearing. "Oh, well, Erica, I didn't invite you because I don't want you there." I actually pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it for a moment, sure I must have misheard. "What do you mean, you don't want me there?" "I'm your daughter." "Yes, well," she cleared her throat. "The thing is, Erica, this is going to be quite an upscale event. There will be a lot of important people there, people from high society. Your father's business associates, my friends from the country club. And, frankly, I'd be embarrassed to introduce you. You don't have a college degree, Erica. What would I say when people ask what you do? It would be uncomfortable." I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to my mother essentially tell me I wasn't good enough to attend her birthday party. "So Lisa and Charlie are invited?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Of course they are," she replied, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "They're college graduates. They understand how to conduct themselves in sophisticated company." I thought about Lisa, who couldn't hold down a job for more than a few months, and Charlie, who worked in a warehouse. But they had degrees, so apparently that made them sophisticated enough for Mom's party. "I see," I said, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. "So that's really how you feel about me?" "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Erica. This is exactly why I didn't want to have this conversation. You always make everything into such a scene." I'd always known my mother loved the twins more than me. But this was different. This wasn't just preferential treatment or casual neglect. This was my mother explicitly stating that she was ashamed of me, that I wasn't worthy of being seen with the family in public. I barely slept that night, my mother's words playing on repeat in my head. By morning, I'd convinced myself that my father couldn't possibly agree with this. He'd always been more reasonable, even if he did favor the twins. I needed to hear his side of things. I drove to my parents' house the next morning, rehearsing what I'd say in my head. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed both Lisa's and Charlie's cars were there too. Great. The whole family was home for this showdown. Mom answered the door with an exasperated look, like I was a door-to-door salesperson interrupting her day. Erica? What are you doing here? I need to talk to Dad, I said, pushing past her into the house. They were all in the living room, Dad in his usual armchair, the twins sprawled on the couch like they owned the place. Dad, I started, my voice already shaking with emotion, did Mom tell you about our conversation yesterday? What do you think about it? He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, not quite meeting my eyes. I think your mother's right. It would be better if you didn't come. The words hit me like a slap. I looked around the room, at these people who were supposed to be my family. All of you feel this way? Obviously, Lisa rolled her eyes. Nobody wants you there. Charlie nodded. For once, can't you just accept something without making it into a huge deal? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So none of you see anything wrong with excluding me from a family celebration? Don't you realize how unfair this is? It's been like this my entire life, the twins are the favorites, and I'm pushed into the background. You don't even see me as part of this family anymore. See, Lisa jumped up, pointing at me accusingly. This is exactly why we don't want you there. You're such a drama queen, Erica. Always making scenes, always reacting negatively to everything. Every time something good happens to us, you try to ruin it with your attitude. You're just jealous, because Charlie and I made something of ourselves while you. That's enough, I cut in, my voice rising. Made something of yourselves? You can't keep a job for 3 months, and Charlie's working in a warehouse. The only thing you've made of yourselves is a joke. Erica, Mom gasped, clutching her pearls like I'd just committed some horrible social faux pas. I turned to my father, desperately seeking some sign of support, but his face had hardened. I think it's time for you to leave, he said firmly. This conversation is over. Leave our house immediately. I stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. As I got into my car, I could see them through the living room window, probably already criticizing my dramatic exit. But I didn't care anymore. They'd finally shown their true colors, all of them. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes life hands you an opportunity that's too perfect to pass up. That's exactly what happened 2 weeks before my mother's birthday. I was grabbing lunch at this little cafe downtown, not my usual spot, but my regular place was packed. As I waited for my order, I glanced around the room, and that's when I saw her. My mother was sitting in a corner booth, trying to be inconspicuous in a wide-brimmed hat, but I'd know that perfect posture anywhere. She wasn't alone. Sitting across from her was a man I'd never seen before. He was probably in his early 40s, well-dressed in a business suit, and definitely not my father. As I watched, he reached across the table and touched her hand, and she giggled, actually giggled, like a schoolgirl. My phone was in my hand before I even realized what I was doing. I pretended to be scrolling through social media while carefully angling the camera their way. Click. Another touch. Click. A shared laugh. Click. After about an hour, they got up to leave. I waited a few moments, then followed. They got into his car, a sleek black Mercedes, and I followed in mine, keeping a safe distance. The car stopped at a red light, and I managed to get several clear shots of them kissing passionately, completely oblivious to the world around them. The Mercedes pulled up to the Grand Plaza Hotel. I parked across the street and watched as they walked in, hands clasped together like teenagers in love. I got it all on video, their entrance, the way they checked in, how they couldn't keep their hands off each other as they waited for the elevator. Back at home, I started planning. A quick internet search of the man's license plate number led me to his social media profiles. He wasn't hard to find, Richard Thompson, successful real estate developer, office in downtown. Married, 3 kids. I spent the next few days preparing everything. First, I had the photos professionally printed in large format. The one of them kissing in the car came out particularly well. The hotel entrance footage went onto a USB drive, along with several other clips I'd managed to capture. I bought the most elegant gift box I could find, cream-colored, with gold trim. Each photo I carefully rolled into a tube and tied with a silk ribbon. Very classy, very sophisticated. Just like my mother always insisted everything should be. The greeting card was the final touch. I wrote Mr. Thompson's full name and address in my best calligraphy, along with a small note, "Thought you might want to know who your husband really is." That one was for his wife, who I was sure would be at the party. Mom had mentioned her specifically when talking about her sophisticated guest list. I closed the box and tied it with a beautiful golden bow. It looked exactly like what you'd expect an expensive birthday present to look like. Nobody would suspect what was inside until it was too late. The day of my mother's birthday party arrived. I'd arranged everything perfectly. The courier was scheduled to deliver the package at exactly 8:30 p.m., when I knew they'd be starting to open gifts. I sat in my apartment that evening, nervously checking my phone every few minutes. The courier confirmed delivery at 8:32 p.m. Now all I could do was wait. I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, my phone rang at 7 a.m. It was my cousin Sarah, and she was practically breathless with excitement. "Oh my God, Erica, you will not believe what happened at the party last night." She didn't wait for my response before continuing. "It was absolutely insane. So everything was going exactly how Aunt Margaret wanted, all perfect and sophisticated." Sarah took a breath before continuing. "Then they started opening gifts. Aunt Margaret was making this big show of it, reading each card aloud and gushing over everything. Then she got to this really elegant cream-colored box. I could picture it perfectly, my mother, the center of attention, probably wearing something expensive and tasteful, surrounded by her carefully curated guest list. She opened the box and saw these rolled-up things tied with ribbons. She was actually commenting on how beautifully they were presented as she untied the first one." Sarah's voice got higher with excitement. Then she unrolled it and... "Erica, I have never seen someone's face change color so fast." "What happened then?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Everything exploded. The photo showed her kissing some man, and get this, the man and his wife were both at the party. Your dad grabbed the photo, and then he started opening all the other rolls. Each one was worse than the last. There were pictures of them going into a hotel together, holding hands, everything." Sarah was practically giddy as she continued. "Your dad just lost it. He lunged across the table at the guy. They started fighting right there between the cake and the champagne. The guy's wife started screaming at your mom, calling her every name in the book. She was throwing things, glasses, plates, everything she could reach. She was screaming about how they'd been married for 20 years, how they had 3 kids, how your mom was a homewrecker. Some of the guests tried to separate everyone, but it was complete chaos." "Sounds intense," I said carefully. Sarah lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Can I be honest? It was kind of amazing to watch. Your mom has spent years looking down her nose at everyone, acting like she's better than the rest of us. Always lecturing everyone about proper behavior and family values. And then this happens. The hypocrisy is just," she actually laughed. "I know I probably shouldn't say this, but it couldn't have happened to a more deserving person. I thought about my mother's perfectly planned party, her carefully cultivated image, her precious high society friends, all of it shattering like the champagne glasses her lover's wife had thrown. Within days, I heard from various relatives that Dad had moved out of the house and was staying at a hotel. He'd already contacted his lawyer about filing for divorce. I wasn't surprised by Dad's reaction. He'd always been proud, maybe to a fault, and this kind of public humiliation wasn't something he could forgive. What did surprise me was his phone call a few days later. Erica," his voice sounded different, older somehow, more uncertain. "I need to ask you something." I'm going to have DNA tests done on all three of you. I need some samples from you, hair and saliva. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't expected this, though perhaps I should have. You think we might not be? I don't know what to think anymore, he cut in. After discovering your mother's activities, I'm not sure of anything. Can I get the samples? Of course, I said, you can come by any time. He came by that afternoon. I'd never seen him look so defeated, his shoulders slumped, his face drawn. This wasn't the stern, competent father I remembered. This was a broken man trying to piece together what was left of his life. I watched as he carefully collected the samples, placing them in sterile containers. His hands were shaking slightly. 2 weeks passed. I tried not to think about the tests, but it was impossible not to wonder. Then Dad called again. Can I come over? His voice was strange, tight with emotion. We need to talk. 20 minutes later, he was sitting on my couch, staring at his hands. I got the results, he said finally. You're mine, only you. The twins, they're not mine. Your mother, she confessed everything. He looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. She had an affair, years ago. The man, she loved him. But he wouldn't leave his family for her. So she settled for having his children. He died a few years back. I've cut off contact with the twins. I can't even look at them now. Every time I see them, I see the lies, the betrayal. The pieces were finally falling into place, all those years of preferential treatment, the constant favoritism. She loved him and she loved his children, Dad continued, his voice bitter. But she never really loved me. And you, he looked at me, real pain in his eyes. You were mine, so she pushed you aside. Made you the outsider in your own home. And God, Erica, I let her do it. I let her turn me against my only real child. He reached for my hand, then stopped himself. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I was a terrible father to you. But if you'd be willing, if you'd let me try. I'd like to have a relationship with my daughter. My real daughter. I looked at this broken man, my father, and felt a complicated mix of emotions, anger, pity, satisfaction, hope. I'll think about it, I said finally. It was all I could offer right then. My mother's call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of a work meeting when my phone lit up with her number. I excused myself and stepped out to take it. I know it was you, she said without preamble. Her voice was cold, controlled, but I could hear the fury underneath. The birthday gift, the photos, all of it. It was you. I didn't hesitate. Yes, it was. The control in her voice slipped. How dare you humiliate me like that? In front of everyone. You want to talk about humiliation? I laughed, and it felt good. How about spending my entire childhood as your personal servant? How about being told I wasn't good enough to attend your birthday party because I didn't have a college degree? That's different. No, Mother, it's not different. You deliberately belittled me my entire life. You turned Dad against me. You turned the twins against me. You made me feel like I wasn't good enough to be part of this family. Well, guess what? Turns out I'm the only one who actually belongs in it. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. You've ruined everything, she finally said, her voice trembling. No, Mother. You ruined everything. I just exposed the truth. Maybe next time you're lecturing someone about morality and proper behavior, you'll remember your own actions. I hung up before she could respond. The months that followed brought massive changes to our family. Dad's divorce was finalized quickly, he had excellent lawyers and a rock-solid case. Mother tried to get a substantial settlement, but the evidence of her infidelity, combined with the DNA test results, left her with little leverage. She ended up with a modest monetary settlement, nowhere near the wealthy divorcee lifestyle she'd probably imagined for herself. Last I heard, she'd moved to another city. Good riddance, as far as I was concerned. The family gossip mill was working overtime, of course. But surprisingly, most of our relatives seemed pleased with how things had turned out. "Your mother had it coming," my Aunt Jane told me over coffee one day. Always looking down her nose at everyone, acting like she was better than the rest of us. Do you know she once spent an entire Christmas dinner lecturing me about how I was raising my kids wrong? Miss High and Mighty herself, preaching about family values while she was. She shook her head and laughed. As for Dad, we're slowly building a relationship. Real one this time, not the shadow of one we had before. He calls regularly, and I've had him over for dinner a few times. He's still struggling with everything that happened, but I can see him starting to heal. Sometimes he even smiles again. The twins? I haven't spoken to them since everything came out. They tried calling a few times in the beginning, but I blocked their numbers. What could they possibly say to make up for a lifetime of cruelty? Some might call it revenge. I call it justice. My mother spent years constructing a perfect facade, presenting herself as a paragon of virtue while treating me like a second-class citizen in my own family. All I did was show everyone who she really was.